Good morning and welcome to N=31, and today I'd like to talk about MvvmCross, of course, and in particular I would like to talk about injection of platform specific services. So this comes up quite a lot as a question, and it's always like, well, I've got this PCL and then I've got some non-portable code, and you know, how do I go about that? Should I start using #ifdefs or whatever? And the answer always is you can if you want to. If you want to use file linking and you want to use #ifdefs instead of portable code, by all means please do. Yeah, there are situations where it's better to do that. However, if you do want to stick with portable code, then you don't have to. And what you can do instead is you can use dependency injection from each platform to inject the necessary specifics. So to start with, just to look at this, I've set up a project. I've just used the standard approach you've seen in all the other N+1s. And I've just set up a PCL core, a droid and a store project. And what I thought I'd do is I would just look at this and I would say that, you know, let's suppose we've got a first view model here. And this first view model needs something that's platform specific. So let's say that it needs interface. Let's say that it needs something like a screen size. I don't even know how I'm going to get this, but let's say it's got a screen size that it needs. And what we will do is we will say, well, obviously this screen size is going to have a height and a width, so let's put that in there. It's going to have a, let's do double height. Get. And it's going to have a double width get. And then we have to work out how are we actually going to get this information into the first view model. Well, obviously what we'd quite like to do is we would quite like to just have it injected, so we'd quite like to have it at runtime passed into our first view model using the constructor as an iScreen size, and we'll just have it as screen size, and then we'll let resharper just add that as a field into the constructor, and then we can probably use it. So let's get rid of this hello property and let's instead have a double, which is going to be underscore height, and then another double, which is going to be width. And so the question is, how are we going to set these properties? Yeah, and obviously what we want to do is we'll just want to do height equals underscore screen size dot height, and width equals underscore screen size dot width. Now, if this was a normal, you know, service, we would just put the service implementation in the view model as well in this core project, and it would work. However, what we're saying is that this is going to be a native call somehow. It's going to be a native service. So what, instead of putting it into this core project, we'll do is we'll put it into the UI projects. So let's do that. Let's in here, that's just below setup, let's add the public class, which is going to be the droid class, and this is going to be the droid screen size, and it's going to implement iScreen size, which is in the core project. So we need it to implement it. And then we need to work out how to actually get these values. So for now I'm just going to fake these values and we'll work out how to do them later. So for droid, let's return 1, 2, 3 for height, and for width we will return 4, 5, 6. Yeah, obviously we'll have to find out a better way of doing that, but for now we can do that. And then what we'll also do is, in this setup project, we actually want to register. So we want to tell the inversion of control system, the service resolution core, that whenever anyone asks for a screen size, please give them a droid screen size. So there are various ways we could do that, but let's just override here in setup an initialize method, and let's override, there's one called initialize last chance, which, not too surprisingly, is the last thing that gets called in the whole of setup. So we'll call base.initialize, and then what we'll do is we'll call mvx, and we'll resolve that, .register, and let's just register a singleton for now. Let me just explain that. So there's registering a singleton, which is a screen size of a new droid screen size. What that means by registering a singleton is that every time anybody asks for a iScreen size, they will get this same instance. Yeah. Some of the other options we could have used is we could have used a register singleton, and again we could use an iScreen size. But this time we could have used a constructor like this. So it's as you can see, it's actually a func that's being passed in. And what that's called is lazy resolution, lazy instantiation. And what that means is that the first time anyone asks for an iScreen size, we will call this func and create a droid screen size. And then every time after that, whenever anyone asks for an iScreen size, they'll get the one that was created first time. So that's lazy. So alternatively, use lazy. What we could also have done is we could have used a dynamic. And what dynamic is it's written like this: MvvmCross.register type. And for this we pass in the iScreen size and the droid screen size. And so for this, what happens is every time anyone asks for an iScreen size, they get a brand new droid screen size, and so nobody shares that instance. So those are the three options we had for registration. As well as that, we could have used patterns if we wanted to. We could have used like a reflection over the whole assembly, and so anything ending in whatever, iService or iScreen size, please register that automatically according to its interfaces. And that's what you typically see in the app.cs in here. But you know, this is block here, creatable types dot. But for this one case, let's just use this. Yeah. So we are going to register a single instance of iScreen size. Okay, with that done, if we actually now go to the view for droid, and we go to the resources, and we go to the layout, and we look at first view, then we can replace this current thing with a text height and text width. And what we should see is at runtime, we have got in our portable class libraries, we will have the service injected directly. This iScreen size will be injected from the UI project. So hopefully that's going to run up. Let's just check it running. Runs up the project, and there you go. So those are the values, the 1, 2, 3 and the 4, 5, 6. So those values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are coming from here. They're coming from the UI project here, and they're being injected into the core project, and they're being consumed in this portable library. So that's a very quick and easy way to get values from one place to the other. I should probably actually do this for real, but I don't think that matters for this sample, so I won't. Let's do the same thing for the store. So if we run the store at the moment without making any changes, then what we should discover is it will throw an exception. Let's just check that. So it's trying to start, and we get an exception, and if you look at what the exception is, then it will be in here, and it will basically be saying it couldn't create it because let me just see if I can find an immediate window. Oh, there probably isn't a dollar exception on the stack, so let me just go back to where I was. So I need this E. So if we look at what E is here, then we should probably see that it's saying catastrophic failure, and basically, no, that's a very useless error message that it's given me. Basically, it couldn't create the type. So let us now, at least I hope that's what that is, first view. Yeah, so I hope that's what that is. So let us now fix that by adding a similar type fix here. So for our store project, we'll again do a store screen size. Screen size. And we'll implement that really quickly. And let's just get the values. And so for the store, we'll return values 1001 and 1201. Obviously these are made up values, but you know, that's all we're doing at the moment. And then again, we'll use this opportunity, this override initialize last chance. And in initialize last chance, we'll call the base first, and then we'll register. So again, we're just going to register with MVX dot register singleton, and we're going to register an I screen size as a new store screen size. So hopefully with that done, we should be able to debug start new, and this should now run. Oh, obviously I haven't changed the XML at this point, so that's not going to be so good. So let me just change the XAML to put that on screen. We won't worry too much about the designer. But let's add 2 text blocks, and these are going to be height and width. And let's also make them a bit bigger so that you can see them. Font size equals 64 is pretty big. And now when we run this up, we should see that we get a different implementation for this guy. So you can see we're getting the 1000 and the 1021. So here is our store project, and it's getting its own injection, its own implementation. So that's how you inject, really quickly. If you've got something that isn't portable, but you've got an interface you can put in place, then that's there. Another advantage is that because you're using this interface with this, then it means that it's testable code, because you can easily inject a test version instead of injecting the real one. So that's the main way, the easy way to quickly inject a native function into your project. There is another way of doing it, which is if you ever want to reuse these things and you want to make them work forwards, then what you can do is you can wrap your implementations instead in a plugin. So to do this, what a plugin is it's a portable class library core in which you put the definitions and any shared code you can put. And then around that you put like satellite assemblies, one for each platform, which contains the native part. And by using a naming convention for these guys, you can actually make it really easy for other people to reuse these across several applications. And you've seen plugins used, if you follow the N+1s, in lots of different situations. But here we'll just create a quick plugin, so let's just do it. And so we'll just create a plugins folder. We'll call it a well, what should we do for this plugin? Well, we'll do this let's think of a bit of native functionality we want. I think something like HTML encoding is a bit hard to do, so let's call this the HTML plugin, and we'll see how this goes. And what we're going to do is in here we're going to create a new project, and this is going to be our core, so this is going to be our portable class library. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it a plugin dot, this could be my company, so acme.plugin.html is what I'm going to call it, HTML core. HTML, that's what I'll call it. And what I'll do to choose is I'll let it support our normal type of platforms. And then as references, I'm not going to add the main MvvmCross package. Instead, I'm going to add a slightly smaller one, which is this cross core, the MvvmCross.hottuner.crosscore, because you don't need all of the MvvmCross to get this working, you just need the core components. So I'm going to add that. And then what we should be able to see is, we've just got some additional libraries added, nothing else there. And so then I will take class 1 and I will rename it. So what I'm going to put into this is I'm going to put into this a public interface, and this interface is going to be IEncode, say, and this IEncode is going to have a simple method which is string encode string input. Yeah, this isn't a real implementation by any means, but at least we're going to have it there. And we won't have an actual we won't have a real implementation at this point for this guy, because that's going to go in the satellite assembly for each platform. Instead, we're just going to leave it as is like that. And then the other thing that you do need in this core plugin is a little bit of boilerplate code. And the boilerplate code is always called a plugin loader. It always inherits from IMVX plugin loader, which hopefully ReSharp will pull in for us. Oops, loader, like that. And obviously we have to ask it to implement it. And ensure loaded, if you're going to have multiple child objects, so you know these satellite assemblies, one for each platform, then what you do is you ask for the plugin manager. So you do manager equals MvvmCross dot resolve IMVX plugin manager, and then when you've got the manager back, you can do, right, well, what I'd like please ensure the platform adaptations are loaded. If you don't think they're always going to be there, you can use try ensure instead, but ensure platform adaptation loaded is the most common thing, and then you just pass in yourself for this because it'll work it out. And then the final thing you do is just make a singleton for this guy, and this is just the convention. So this is how plugins work. They are conventional, and they have kind of this naming, this boilerplate code that is in every plugin. And to do that, you just add an instance of yourself. Yeah, and that is what the core of the plugin is. So let me just rename this. Let me just do a resharper, rename files. And then hopefully that should build. Okay, so that is a very simple core plugin. It's got an Encode in it, which is just our interface, and it's got this plugin loader that says, please, you know, find files of the right name, and then, you know, and the names will be decided by this, and then use them. So with that done, let's take a look at how we'd add the satellite projects. So what you do is you do add new project, and then let's start with the Android one. So we'd start with the Android class library. And we would add a acme.plugin.html.droid, because .droid is the extension for an Android class library for plugins. So you can see it's got exactly the same name, it's just .droid on the end. So you hit OK, and that creates a class library. And again, you know, there's nothing particularly exciting there. It's just a standard class library. And what we want to do is we want to add a reference to our core plugin, so to the acme.plugin.html. And then we also would like to add the NuGet packages for that MvvmCross core cross core. Let's just see if we can find cross core. So into this guy, which is the hottuner.crosscore. Add those in. And when you've done that, then what you can see is, you know, again, there's just some references been added, there's no additional files. So with those added, you can then actually say, well, what I want to do is I'd like, within this droid plugin, I would like to implement that Encode. So let's have a go. So this public class droid encode is going to be an Encode. Yeah. And it says please implement me. So what we might like to do here is something like, do we have an HTTP utility here? This is what I wanted to use. Okay, so what is it? It's a system.net.ht. Okay, so I can't do what I wanted to do. So all I'm going to do is a URI dot. Let me just do an escape data string for now. But there's definitely something you could have done here which is not portable. But let's just pretend this is what the portable code is. So it's just a simple example. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to return this, which might not be, you know, portable code, back to the calling method. And then again, what I have to do is add in some dependent code, some plugin boilerplate code. In this case, what is the plugin code for a kind of one of these satellite assemblies? Is a plugin class which is going to inherit from IMVX plugin. Whoops, not from bad image formatting example. MvvmX plugin. And we'll pull that in using resharper. And this just has this load method, and you can be sure this will only get called once. And what we're going to do in here is we will call MvvmX, and again you could use the same registration methods here for IOC as you've used earlier, so you can use register singleton, register type, or whatever. And here let's just register type, because that's what we kind of want. And it says that when everyone asks for an Encode, then we will give them a droid encode. Yeah. And in fact, let me really just prove the point here. Instead of doing this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do droid encoded colon plus input. So that's what the droid encoder is going to do. So with that done, again, we can use resharper to put those into two separate files if you think that helps. And we can build this. And you can see we've now got a complete plugin for droid. Let's just add one for store as well. So quickly, we're going to add a new project. It's going to be a Windows Store specific class library. So it's got access to everything that Windows Store has got. It's going to be called acme.plugin.html.windows store. And it is important you get these names right. So it's Windows Phone, Windows Store, Droid and Touch are the names of currently. And we'll click OK. Yeah. And then what we'll do is we kind of need exactly the same sort of functionality. So we're going to have a store encode. Just going to implement IEncode, and that's probably going to tell me that I have to reference the core plugin and to implement. I don't think I've added the NuGet package, so let me do that as well. So again, MvvmCross, and we just need this crosscore, which is the hottuner.crosscore package. Pull it in. And then what we can do is you can see we've got this class 1 we can implement. So let's just do this. We will return here store encoded plus input. So this might be something that requires specific hardware calls or whatever on the hardware. And then we need to provide this plugin class again, this boilerplate. So here we go, plugin, and this is an IMVX plugin. Again, resharp will work out how to pull that in. And in here what we do is exactly the same sort of thing of MVX dot register type, and here we register the I encode with the store encode. Yeah, so that again should be that finished. Let me just do the resharper. Refactor, move types into matching files. Next. And we should at this point be able to build that fine. So that is a plugin done. That's a plugin done for Droid and for Windows Store. If you then wanted to use it, so let's say that in our portable class library we really want to use IEncode, then what you do is back in the portable class library in the view model, for example, you might want to use IEncode. So you'd get hold of, you can either wrap these things up in NuGet exactly the same as MvvmCrosses, or you can just access them as normal assemblies, as normal projects. So we'll add a reference to our core HTML plugin, and what we'll do then is in the first view model we will say, as well as getting an I screen size, we would like to get an I encode, which you can pull in from that namespace, encode, and we'll take a reference to that as well, please. Private read only I encode underscore encode. And so we can use this here as well. So let's use it, encode equals encode, and then let's add a property. Let me just use my snippet to generate that property. Private string underscore foo. And what we will do is we will do foo equals, and what we'll do is underscore encode dot encode, and let's get a string. How should we generate a string? Let me just do a date time dot now. Whoops. System.datetime.now.toString, and I'll just use whatever the default formatting is for that. So we should then get a native encoding for these guys. So if we just try and run this now without doing anything else, then we will obviously not get these plugins pulled in. So let me just show you the type of error message you'll get if you let me just rebuild the code, make sure that's okay. If you now try to register to run injection.store without any kind of assistance, then you get an exception, and the exception you'll get is a fiddly one again, but it's basically saying, and you can see the stack here, that it couldn't load it because it didn't know how to get hold of one of these iStores, one of these things. So hopefully there's even more information in the output. No, obviously we have to turn on trace for that, sorry about that. So it's not going to work without now referencing the Windows Store specific plugin. So to do that, what we do is we go here and we're going to add the references in our store project to the core plugin and to the Windows Store plugin. And then we're going to also add a bootstrap file. So the bootstrap file here, this isn't something I normally add directly in, but here we go, is going to be a public class, and for this what we do is we're going to add a bootstrap that is just going to get picked up, and it's going to inject for us the at startup the correct plugin. So it'll make more sense after I've typed it. And what we're going to do is we're just going to pull in, and let's call it the Acme HTML. I know it's nothing to do with HTML anymore. So the Acme HTML bootstrap. So it's just going to start this plugin for us, is all we care about. And this is an MvvmCross plugin bootstrap action. So you have to remember this, sorry about that. And it's a plugin bootstrap action which should get pulled in for us by ReSharper in a moment. And let me just pass in the type, and the type of the plugin is obviously acme.plugin.html.plugin loader. So why is that now not in there? This should be pulled in for me if I just... it's because I've mistyped bootstrap. Hang on, there it is. Bootstrap. So with that pulled in, that's it. Yeah, as long as that is included in your project, then that will get found by reflection at startup and will just be used. So now we've added, so again, just to go through the steps, we just added those two references, and then we just added this bootstrap file. With that done, if we now run up the store, let me also add a little bit of XAML so you can just see it, that we actually do get something called. Let us add, and I think it's called foo, a foo to the UI. And now hopefully if we run this up, debug start new, then it says failed. And is it because I've got two different versions? Okay, so somehow I've managed to include two different versions. I apologize for that. Let me update everything in my project. So if you ever get different versions of your NuGet packages imported for whatever reason, then you can go to the NuGet Package Explorer and you can unify these things. So what I'd like to do is, where's my NuGet Package Explorer? Other Windows, Package Manager Console, that's the one. And I think what I can do is let me try get help NuGet. Start with. And I think what I can do is update. So let me just try that. Oops. So what it's going to do is it's going to update everything to the latest. Sorry about that, I shouldn't have had two different things in there. And it's asking me if I want to overwrite things. No, I don't. So this hint, just to give it to you again, is if you do get things out, have multiple versions somehow, this is because I've got local copies of NuGet and core copies of NuGet at the same time. But if you ever get into that, then you can always just update to one single thing by doing pm update package. Obviously check into source control or stash your file somewhere first in case something goes wrong. But that's it. It's just update package and it updates everything in your solution for you. So with that done, hopefully I can actually go ahead and build again. Sorry about that. And then what I'm going to do is wait for it to build. And it says build succeeded, which is good. And then what I'll do is debug start new. And now hopefully you can see I have got store encoded, so it's using the store version of the plugin, and it's got the current date, and it's still got those height and width. So let's now see if we can do the same thing to Droid. And so in Droid what we're going to do is exactly the same process. So we're going to go to add reference, and we're going to add the Droid version of the plugin and the core version of the plugin assembly. That's done. We are then going to add into setup, we'll just add that same bootstrap type thing. So let's just go here, and what we'd like to do is public class, and it was called, let me just copy the code actually, let me go to here. You can just copy the same block over into the bootstrap, and that's done, and that can go into its own file as well. And then the final thing we want to do is just in first here, we would like to have foo displayed. So let's just do it, and we will have foo. And now we should be able to build this. And now we should be able to debug start new. So it's deploying, and if I go to the emulator, there you can see it's got the droid encoded plugin version. So that's kind of where I'm going to stop now, but I'd just like to go over the steps again for what you can do. If you need something from the native project injected into your core project. And so there are two kind of key ways you can do it. The first is to declare in your kind of core project an interface like iScreenSize here, and then implement that interface in either the droid project or the store project or your UI projects. And let me just also pull that out because obviously I haven't been very neat in my code. Yeah, so in the store project here we implemented store screen size, and then we registered it with this kind of core MVX lookup system, as whenever anyone asks for an iScreen size, give them a store screen size. And we did the same thing in droid. In the setup we said whenever anyone asks for a iScreen size, give them a droid screen size. And that just then meant it could be used as normal. Yeah. The hook we used for that was called initialize last chance. And initialize last chance occurs at the very last moment within your system, within your initialization of your system. If that's too late, if you needed it, for example, during setup itself, during the construction of the app, then there's also an initialize first chance, and there are also other places where you could hook in. Most people either use first chance or last chance, but if you do need some of the intermediate steps, you can do that as well. But most of the time, 99% of the time, hopefully first chance or last chance will be where you want to act. And that worked for both droid and store for this iScreen size. The second option was that we could produce this plugin, and plugins have the advantage that they are easier to reuse across multiple projects, because if you now want to create another second injection.core, you can use these same plugins time and time again. And they kind of have the advantage that they're more easy to redistribute, because you can redistribute them just like we distribute the MvvmCross ones, and you can test them easier, and you can build dependencies between them, sort of thing, very much easier because they are library projects. And in order to do that, what we did was we created the interface and the shared code within this kind of portable class library, and then we added this kind of horrible boilerplate code, this plugin loader. And it's something you can just cut and paste most of the time, because it is just one thing that's needed for the convention to work. And then the second thing we did was we added these satellite assemblies, one for Droid, one for Windows Store. We could also have added them for Windows Phone and for Touch and for all the other projects. And within these we put implementations for those interfaces, and then we added a plugin file, and the plugin file registered those implementations. Yeah, so it registered them with IOC. And that's all we did for HTML.droid and HTML.Windows Store. And then when we actually came to use them, we could just use them by referencing the core of the plugin, just like that. And then when we came to needing to put them into the UI, we had to reference both the core of the plugin plus the platform specific of the plugin. We also hit a problem because we had version problems. Those version problems were solved by us doing some package manager, just updating everything to the same version. Apologies for that. But the core message here was we just referenced those two guys, and then we added this bootstrap file. And the bootstrap file again is just boilerplate. It's just an MVX plugin bootstrap action, and it just takes the plugin loader, and then it works out itself. There is one exception to that, which I didn't really talk about, which is that for Touch, this bootstrap is slightly different. For Touch, it is more of a bootstrap where you also pass in, let me see if I don't even know if I can do it from here. Plugin loader bootstrap option, is it? No, so for Touch there is a slightly different version, and let me just find that version for you one moment. So for Touch, the version that you use, and I can show you from a previous N+1. So for Touch, this is a Touch project. The bootstrap files for touch look slightly different, because for touch they are MVX loader plugin bootstrap actions, and they take 2 parameters. And that's just because of the way touch works and the way the ahead of time compile works. But that's basically the only difference. Yeah, so apologies for that I didn't really demo that during this session. But you know, it's minor, it's really tiny. And then once you've added that, then you can just update your UI and your view, and away it runs. And at runtime you get the injection of the very type that you wanted into your system. So that's a very quick N+1, and it's basically covering how to do injection of platform-specific services. If you need to see more on this, then there's some quite good documents coming together on this now. And you know, all of the projects we've been working on, they all have this as a core kind of principle, because all of the N+1s use plugins. And then finally, there is also within the tutorials project, there is also a vibrate. So let me just show you that as well. What I can do is, we're in the right place. There's a good vibrations project, and the good vibrations project, I will say yes to that. So good vibrations adds a vibrate plugin, and hopefully it's going to load. Thinking about it. And what happens in the vibrate program plugin is obviously vibration using the motor and whatever else that causes the phone to vibrate. It's very platform specific. And you can see here, hopefully, you have a core vibration, and then you have the satellite ones, one for each platform. And the core one just kind of has iVibrate in it, which just has a shake method in this case. It has that plugin loader exactly as you kind of expected from the N+1 we've just been through. And the platform specific ones I have, like MvvmCross droid vibrate, has this globals that gets hold of the context service that does, you know, a vibrate. The Windows Phone one similarly has a vibrate controller that's a very native thing. And then just in your sample projects, it's exactly the same way that things are set up. You'll see that, you know, for example, the Windows Phone one here has the vibrate plugin. The touch one has the touch plugin somewhere down here. The vibration plugin has that different format. And that's the way it works. So this is available on the MVX tutorials, on the MvvmCross-tutorials repo. And hopefully that will also give you an idea. Okay, so that is the end of N=31. Not sure I did that well today again, sorry. I must practice these before I record them a bit better. But I hope that you found that useful in terms of using dependency injection and inversion of control to get over problems where you really need platform-specific services within your UI projects and in your PCL projects. So that's it, and yeah, have a good one.